Okay, so with me, I'm joined by my colleague, Gayatri, and also partner Angelo from Aitken Spence Hotels. We are going to be looking at trends today, some historical trends in the year of pandemic. And we are also looking to look at some forward-looking data on actionable stuff that can be done on market segments and channels. And then we will learn from Angelo's experience on markets that are at various stages, that are open, that's having international traffic, that's having domestic traffic, and those where borders are closed. So now if we just go and look at hotel year on India occupancy and ADR and RevPAR, we have taken about 500 odd hotels in this sample. We can see that occupancy has dropped from 66.5% between January to August to 31.8%, and RevPAR has dropped from $62 to $25. And these are hotels across market segments, across geographies, and across price points. And between September to December of this year, business on books is about 1.7% occupancy. And just give me a moment because I think I'm having challenge with the slide. Is this okay? Can somebody just speak up if you can see the slide, right? All right. So in terms of group and transient, which are the most favorite market segments in India, you can see that they have been pretty much brought down to nothing in terms of groups, and transient business on books is just about 1.5% compared to about 9% last year. Let's go to the next slide. If we look at transient occupancy versus last year, we can pretty much see that everything has been decimated. And going forward, there were small shoots of recovery between June to August. But if this continues like what we are seeing, business on books is pretty marginal, the very best way to put it. Moving on, ADR versus last year. We can see how it has dropped, and my guess is as good as all of yours that most people will focus on occupancy in this year and going forward as we recover. And once only occupancies are stabilized, we will probably be looking at ADRs. Now, if we look at market segments compared to last year for a typical month, we have taken August. We can see that retail market segment has probably seen the maximum shift only next to discount. So people are discounting their rates. The other market segments are really small. Negotiated business has fallen from 15 to about 9.5%. Groups have fallen from 16 to 7.4% in the month of August. And we think that this is pretty much the same trend that we will get to see in the months that follow from here onwards. And surprisingly, if we look at channels, we will see that direct business has seen the maximum increase. And mind you, the occupancies are vastly different between August of last year to August of this year. However, if you look at brand.com and OTA put together, the shift has really not been that much. The total occupancy percentage is round about 30%. But you can see how brand has performed in the month of August and how OTA has performed in the month of August. So probably it's a time to think that if you can't beat them, join them, because OTAs are clearly taking the lead in recovery. Going forward, if we look at the lead time, we will see that most of the lead time is happening in the 0 to 7 days window. And compared to last year, direct business is still about just 60% in terms of direct business that is coming to the hotel. And in longer lead times, between 15 to 30 days and onwards, there's almost nothing coming in brand.com or CRS business. There is almost nothing happening. So what's immediate, what's in the near future, therefore needs to be studied more minutely. It doesn't matter whether the recovery is V-shaped or U-shaped or hockey stick shaped, as various people are putting it. The fact still remains that looking at past data is of absolutely no use. So on the business that is going to happen till end of the year, as we hold business on the books, this is between September to December, we are seeing that discounted rates are probably the maximum. That's going to be the case, followed by group and negotiated, which are in the range of 19-20%. The rest are really not that significant, but we expect that retail will probably grow from 14 to mid-20s as we finish the year. So just shifting gears, therefore, just looking at past data is not going to determine how the future is going to look like. Therefore, looking at forward-looking data is going to be the key. And just not at the market level, because market may not go in the same direction that your immediate comp set is choosing. So here is a hotel in a key city of India, and we are looking at their immediate business, and I will contrast this with forward-looking business. This hotel is doing 50% RevPAR in comparison with its comp set. And if we look at the market segments, we will clearly see that this hotel is not very fond of giving discounts. This hotel is not very good in driving groups. And this hotel has a little bit edge in qualified business and other sources of business which can't be categorized in any of these. And when we look at their channels of business, we know that this hotel is not driving as much direct business as its comp set, does not believe in giving discounts to OTAs. So therefore, it has just done 0.1% compared to 5.6% occupancy of that of the comp set. And its brand.com is not that strong too. So therefore, the hotel has got some options to choose. That is it going to open up more to the OTAs? Is it going to do something by which it can drive more direct business? But the key will be if this hotel looks at the next 90 days, and this is what I have for you, that this is the next 90 days as the hotel is looking like, to understand what could be a fix in the strategy. Now, this hotel is picking up a lot of tentative blocks, which probably is not doing good, because closer to the arrival dates, this hotel is not able to convert these blocks. Retail is not performing, discount is not performing. So these are very good leading indicators for the hotel's sales revenue strategy team to figure out if it is going to change its course of business, whether it or it should invest in some marketing dollars to shore up brands, whether OTAs need to be spoken to in order to drive business. Uh, we can we can keep looking at a lot of past data, but unless we go and focus really minutely, even within these segments, for example, if we start looking at day to day in terms of the different rate types, that is advanced purchase or generally discounted rate or packages every day in contrast with the competition, we are not going to pick up any leading indicators of what's going right and what's going wrong. So let's change gears and get on to our partner Angelo from Aitken Spence Hotels, who's also looking at a lot of data. So Gayatri, over to you.
Thank you, Joy. Hi, Angelo. Start off with, we'll get right into it because we have quite a few thoughts to share in a few minutes. Your portfolio of hotels are across Sri Lanka, Maldives, India, and Oman. Quite a vast number of sprawl of markets. And interestingly, they are at different stages of reopening in this pandemic. Can you share with us your experience of how you have been handling this as borders opened over time, especially in terms of hotel operations, and quite briefly, give us a bit of context on where we are in the timeline of reopening.
Thank you, Gayatri. Yeah, it has been very, very interesting post the pandemic hitting and how each market kind of operates and behaves. So majority of the data that we knew of in terms of source market, how each source market behaved, what enticed them to travel to a certain market, all has been reset to zero. So currently it is based on the availability of destination to travel to and what source market is allowed to travel out of their particular country. Starting off with Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka has been closed down from March, mid-March, so to speak, and it's still the airports are closed off. So currently, what we are looking at for Sri Lanka is the domestic market movement, and how we looked at domestic market right now is also has changed from what it was pre-COVID. So current situation is where we are looking at families, friends, couples, groups traveling towards all these hotels because we were, as a population, we were restricted to our homes for about a month's time or 1.5 months time. And as soon as we were given the opportunity or the green light to move, there was a lot of pent-up demand that that was utilized, and we see that demand being utilized till today. For going to Maldives, it has been slightly different because the market has been open. Certain markets are allowed to come in. Actually, it's free market allowed to come in as long as those market allows flight. And we've seen slow but gradual improvement in certain markets. We've seen new markets coming in, and we've understood. We've tried to understand how data can kind of give us this information. For example, in terms of Russia, we understood that there's going to be a set of movement towards Maldives coming in as data where the reservations, the new reservations made superseded the cancellations that were happening even before officially it was announced. So data through the TravelClick, it will kind of give us this information which allowed us to kind of target these specific geo throughout campaigns and to our clientele in this market. India again currently is having quite a bit of community cases, so there is a bit of domestic movement, but very, very at a very slow pace. In terms of Oman also, we've had the borders closed down. The usual business travel versus leisure travel splits have changed. The overall movement also has changed quite a bit. And those markets have drastically changed from before to now and the time frame they are open. So it's very important to understand this data and kind of adjust your strategy on a swivel or rather than just sticking to one particular direction.
So from the markets that are present right now, Maldives is the only market where borders are open for international travelers. So maybe we can focus a little bit more on Maldives for the next couple of minutes. What has been your thinking like? So how did your thinking start in terms of strategy? How did you decide, or what data points did you look at to decide on which segments to target? Of course, your source markets would have changed now. So what data points were you referring to, and what did you think about? How did you come across and formulate that strategy for when Maldives reopened for international travelers?
So Gayatri, we went back right to the drawing board because previous data, how consumer patterns and behaviors change has no impact on what previously we knew towards post-pandemic. So we started by talking to our customers and in source markets that we are used to and our repeater client base as well. And we started off with safety messages, ensuring the safety protocols that are taken and put in measure at each resort, showing we were on social media also talking about how the property is an actual ground level, trying to take off that uncertainty to at least some extent and say, coming to our hotels, we have taken all the necessary precautions as per international guidelines. So in terms of source markets, as markets are opening up, closing really, really fast, usually we are used to markets, either a penetration strategy where we are going to a market and develop the market and that becomes a solid market. No longer is the case because the restrictions are not bound by the traveler or by the hotel and being visible of a completely different factor. So we try to communicate campaigns, offering, and showcase that if you come to the particular hotel, whether they will be able to enjoy their vacation. We talk a lot to our repeater base as well, keep communicating about the current status of the hotel. We look at every trend that is possible, from length of stay to lead times to the amount of reservation an individual would make over and over again in terms of repeat visits, especially when it comes to domestic markets. And what's fascinating is it changes really, really fast. So we have to keep our head on a swivel, understand, we monitor the data that is provided through analytics and we push forward as much as possible.
And in your opinion, across the channels that you have now implemented, various marketing activities and so on, which channel do you see is recovering the first and the fastest? Because of course, most of the hotels we work with are focusing on their brand channels because this gives the lowest CPA, and especially during these times, we are trying to keep the costs as low as possible. But with your portfolio of hotels, especially in two different markets, Sri Lanka and Maldives, how do you see the channels performing?
Well, we see a lot of movement online. Specifically, we try to focus a lot on brand.com, where, as you said, the CPA is low, and also it provides that additional insurance to us because we are directly talking to our client as it is something that we feel that we have to do and ensure them about their stay, about their travel, about the ability for them to enjoy their stay. So brand.com has been our main performer. followed by the OTAs as well, where they're also talking to the clientele. They provide a lot of information. We go on the TravelClick analytics all the time. We try to go through the recovery tool as much as possible to understand trends, flight patterns, where we get the GDS sources again through TravelClick. It kind of gives us a wholesome feeling of or understanding of how the market behaves on brand.com, and then we mismatch it and match it against what trends we see on OTAs, and we try to find that middle ground. And what's interesting is it keeps changing every week. Sometimes even every couple of days, the trends would trade up or down, or completely die down depending on the market conditions. So it's very important to be dynamic and fluid at this point.
And finally, just shifting a little bit from Maldives, which is a very resort, and of course, right now you're focusing on international travelers, moving towards India and Sri Lanka, where Sri Lanka you're focusing on domestic travelers right now, and we feel that even in India, the first movement will be from domestic travelers. So a bit of an outlook here on how you are driving domestic tourism and what your thoughts are behind this.
So we see a lot of movement in this new segment or branded segment called micro travel, where couples, families, friends, groups tend to travel more on leisure related activities. And the time frame we see is if it's from the center of the individual where they are located to the hotel, if it's about 2 to 3 hours in terms of travel time, we see a very short lead time, where it's anywhere between 3 to 7 days in terms of the booking cycle or the lead time. If it's we see the same the length of stay differences as well. For markets like Maldives, we see a longer length of stay, as island hopping is no longer allowed. Once you come into Maldives, you have to kind of be in that particular resort island until you depart Maldives. So this has become something that we've seen throughout in Maldives, even for resorts that had shorter periods of stay. Now the length of stay has increased. And also we see within Sri Lanka and even in India, in terms of domestic travel, the number of rooms that are booked because of these family and friends and group reservations have increased, with the average length of stay being anywhere between 1 to 3 nights. It provides a lot of run rate business, and talking to them in terms of a campaign, showcasing them the value additions, trying to make sure that the rate is right at this particular point and provide value additions while not diluting the rate is very important as well. There are value seekers as well, so to understand whether the customer segment, the domestic segment, is more value related or more experience related is also important, and that targeting comes in.
Thank you very much, Angelo, and thank you to everybody else who joined today. Thanks.
Thank you.